I don't know if you know any female magicians, do you? So we all early on heard Sam taken as this journey where he opened up our brains and talked about mind space. Now we're going to meet another behavioral scientist who's going to unlock some new magic for us. And this way it's in terms of changing shopping behaviors and consumption behaviors. And she's traveled all the way from also my home country, Denmark, so you can give her en hjertelig velkommen, which is in Danish, heartfelt welcome. So give Sille a big round of applause, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Thomas. So I have 20 minutes to introduce you to some of the insights that me and my team work with when changing consumer and employee behavior. And 20 minutes is not a lot for a scientist like me, so I'm going to speak a little bit fast. I hope that's okay. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how we change consumer and employee behavior towards more sustainable decision making. And firstly, I just want to say changing human behavior is a matter of making the right decisions the easy ones. So designing services, products, and customer journeys that make the right, and in this case, the sustainable decisions the easy ones. So moving from having an ambition to change to create actual and measurable change on an everyday basis. But here's the thing. When doing so, we often assume that we know the solution already. We think that creating sustainable decision-making is a matter of telling people how green we are, or showing them how this cup was produced, or even better, adding new technological solutions, telling them even more about what's inside of the products. The basic thing here is that motivation follows behavior. We don't need to be motivated to change our behavior. It's the other way around. So when it comes to implementing sustainability strategies on a consumer level, it all starts with behavior. We all have to start out there by looking at human behavior. And when looking at human behavior, there are some crucial insights that we need to take into consideration. These are the two main ones. So basically, human behavior is driven by two systems. The reflective system, over here, and the automatic system over here. So reflective thinking is conscious thinking. That is when we're able to translate knowledge and insights into a behavior change. Right now, you are being reflective because you're gaining a lot of information, and you're processing information. Reflective thinking is what allows us to come up with sustainability strategies and figure out how to solve the problems of the world. So reflective thinking is very important and crucial for the human species. However, there's a downside to reflective thinking. It is very effortful, meaning that every time we're being reflective, we lose blood sugar. That's why we can only concentrate for 20 minutes at the time and 45 minutes if we're lucky. Then we need sugar and water to refuel. This, however, also means that we as a species are set by default to be automatic thinkers, 90% of the time. So 90% of the time, our thinking and therefore decision-making is made by unconscious processes. Because automatic thinking is everything else. That is what we call habits. That is every time you take a sip of your water or you change your position in the chair, it does not require processing. Automatic thinking and automatic behavior is actually what we're up against when we're looking to alter sustainable choices. Because automatic thinking is not controlled by knowledge. It is not controlled by motivation. Automatic thinking is controlled by our surroundings in the moment of choice and how well they play with or against our basic human instincts. So, to make sure that we implement sustainability ambitions on an everyday basis, we have to start designing choice architecture. And choice architecture is basically everything that surrounds our decision making in the moment of choice. That means we have to get very close to the consumer, and we have to get very close to the existing choice architecture to figure out what is actually creating the behavior we wish to change. Because the answer lies within the choice architecture. Choice architecture can be something physical. It can be invisible interventions influencing our decision making. So it's basically processes and surroundings in the moment of choice. But I'm going to show you some examples on choice architecture. The two cases I want to show you today are built around two basic behavioral design strategies. There are tons of different behavioral design strategies, but today I'm going to introduce you to two of them. The first one over here behind me is visual directions, and the other one is priming. But let me start with visual directions, if I can. It is not changing. Okay, I hope it doesn't change now. Okay, so I just want to demonstrate to you why visual directions are so important. And to do that, I'm going to ask you to engage as well. So if I can just get all of you to raise your finger like this. Cool. And in a second, you have to point in the direction the slide says. So you have to look up here and point in the direction the slide says. Okay, and hopefully this is going to change the slide. Are you ready? Yes, and you have to do it really fast. Cool. Yes, I see some confusion. Thank you very much. So 75% of you started out by pointing that direction and then changed your direction, whereas some of you started out by pointing towards what the letters said up here. Basically, 80% of the human species has an automatic behavior around visual directions. That means we react intuitively to visual directions. That's why you can tell someone to do a certain thing, and then a second later they do something completely different, because the visual directions in the moment of choice was a different message. So it confuses our systems when we give complex information like written letters, for example. The first case I'm going to show you is a case we did for an insurance company. They wanted to improve customer satisfaction. And customers was unsatisfied with the amount of time the insurance company used on each insurance case. So every time a customer would call in to report a broken item, they were very unhappy because it took so long time before they got their money back or whatever they needed from the insurance company. So we started mapping out the behavior of the employees in the insurance company. And what we found was the problem was not the employees, it was in the choice architecture that they had to use. Because when you're an employee in an insurance company, or actually in any call center or something like that, you're taking information from a customer as you receive a phone call. So what the employees were doing was they were very good listeners and trying to be very kind to the customers as well. But as they were listening, they were supposed to take notes and give 5 types of information back into the insurance system. If that didn't happen, the insurance cases would be prolonged by 20%. When we met them, this process of taking notes only happened in 5% of the calls they would receive. And that was creating the problem. So we looked at the existing choice architecture, in this case, a tiny little piece of software, a template that the employees had to write notes in. And they had to write notes, which requires reflective thinking. And you cannot be reflective at listening and writing at the same time. So what we did was we redesigned that template from being a written template to a visual one, designed in a way so it followed the natural way of the employees speaking to customers. And then we tested it. And the amount of times where employees would take notes went up by 76%. which is a huge change when you look in behavioral interventions. But the interesting thing was the more long-term consequences, because it turned out that the amount of time being spent on each insurance case went down by 31%, and the amount of employees interacting with each case also went down by 11%. And to me, that's where it becomes interesting, and that is also a perspective that's important in sustainability. We need to build good and business viable business cases. The last principle I'm going to introduce you to is priming. So priming basically means placing an idea of a positive behavior in your mind just before you're about to change your behavior. And we worked with priming for a European retailer. So basically this retailer wanted to serve their customers better. So they did a huge survey to look out what's important for our customers. They had mainly families, and the most important thing for these families were to make sure that the kids were served healthy food and healthy meals. So in order to help them be successful with that, we started mapping out the behavior related to shopping habits for dinner and lunch. And we started looking at the existing choice architecture again. And what we found was there was a certain thing in their space management that was the same all in different supermarkets, and which created a bad priming effect, basically. Let me explain what I mean. So what would happen to these families when they went shopping was just before they entered the areas of especially meat, vegetables, and sugary snacks, they would be faced with signs showing them sugary snacks and fatty meat products. This means that they were being primed to buy these kind of products. So without even noticing it, they would get an unconscious message telling them, this is what we're going to buy, and they ended up buying that. So we ran a pilot for them, and what we did was we changed the in-store signage surrounding all the areas where you get to choose meat, snacks, or vegetables. We changed the signage from being focused and showing pictures of fatty meat and sugary snacks to showing pictures of people choosing healthy vegetables. That was the only change we made. And then we tested this change in the environment. And the amount of vegetables being sold went up by 83% instantaneously. So the important thing here, and what I want to leave you with, is when you're looking to implement sustainability strategies, it's very good to have a plan, and it's very good to have an idea of what your customers and employees want to be successful with. But in order to be successful with it, you need to have an outside-in approach. You need to take all your predefined solutions, put them in a drawer, and then go out there and figure out what's actually going on. And you need to collect data on observation. You need to collect data on interactions, and then put together a behavioral map. Define all the barriers that are keeping people from not choosing the sustainable choices on an everyday basis. Because you can be sure that they really actually want to be sustainable, but somehow we have created an environment that makes it hard for them to succeed. Once you've done that, the trick is to redesign the choice architecture. So be aware that you have no idea what the right solution is before you know what behavior are taking place out there and what the existing choice architecture is. As soon as you know that, then you can start designing. But then the real trick is to be agile. Don't be afraid to do pilots, but do pilots in representative markets, because what's important about this is once you come up with a solution within this arena, it can be scaled and implemented into other markets, because we are human beings all over the world, and we are driven by the same kind of systems. So changing human behavior and making the sustainable choice a feasible one is really a matter of designing a highway of services and products that make the right decisions the easy ones. And that's all for me.
Thank you so much, Sille. It's great to have even more input into this little magic toolbox of behavior change. I mean, there's so many different tactics that can be applied, so thank you so much for giving us a few more tools. But one of the themes here today, activating purpose. So how do you activate some of this stuff? If you give people in the audience just one key takeaway on how to start this kind of behavior change methodologies, what should they do? What should be the key takeaway?
Well, I think you should engage your research teams, your comms teams, and allow them and teach them how to do behavioral mappings, first of all. So before we assume that we know what works in our product design and our space management design and all sort of the practical platforms that hits our consumers, they need to be able to do research and research on behavior, which does not mean creating surveys or focus groups. It's a different methodology. So expanding competences within the organizations, first of all.
Cool, thank you so much. And give Sille a big round of applause, and you will probably be around, so if you do have any questions, grab her in the break. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.